beautiful architect for the church. I think the church won something for the design. Is that true? I've heard something like that. Very nice and very beautiful. And the other thing is you guys have snow, but in Mississauga we don't have any snow. So what's that? It's interesting. Last week in our university group, I spoke about this topic, and I thought this topic is quite important to address again in any university meeting university or high school. I think that we're a mix today of university, high school, right? Because the topic that you have in your hands, I mean, this handout pretty much speaks of something that we all experience, right? Anxiety, right? Who does not experience anxiety? I think everyone, young or old, adults, no matter who it is, you will experience anxiety. And so I wanted to speak of overcoming anxiety as something that is quite important, either for yourself or maybe you can pass on these tips for other people. Now, the first thing I want to say about this is if you are experiencing anxiety, you are very normal. A lot of people, when they experience anxiety, they actually feel they have moved from normal to abnormal. And they'll tell you this. They'll say that. They'll say, you know, I don't feel I'm normal. Some of them will say, I remember the day when I became abnormal. And what definitely doesn't help is if you sit with someone and says, and so that person says, oh, that's not normal. Or this sounds extreme. So the first thing I want you to know is that if you're experiencing anxiety or worrying or stressing out, that is normal. There is no one who does not feel anxious at some point in time. It's even more common to feel anxious when you are an adolescent. And an adolescent or adolescence nowadays is not 13 to 18 or 13 to 19. Adolescence now starts at age 9 and ends in and around 22, 23. That's adolescence for you. Having said that, even older people experience anxiety at different points and at different times. But at this stage, you're very prone to emotional changes. Your thoughts, if you were to write down your thoughts, you know how it was said about Christ, if everything that he did was to be written down, the books would not be good enough. I think if we were to sift through our thoughts, we have so many thoughts that come, and some of them are not necessarily very healthy thoughts. So it's very common, anxiety is very common, and you can work through it and you can overcome it. And that's why I'm here to discuss some of the tips and some of the ideas of how to overcome anxiety when it comes to visit you. Why am I saying when anxiety comes to visit you versus saying you're an anxious person? What's the difference between the two? Anxiety visits versus you are an anxious person.
It's like a sort of a disease, I think, but like anxiety visits us is like a period of time where we feel anxious because of this specific stress.
So this last part is the correct one. The first part on the disease part, I'm not going to speak much of because anxiety, like I said, it can visit anyone. But the idea that anxiety visits you is different than saying you are anxious. Because if you're anxious, you and anxiety become one thing. But to think of anxiety visiting you, that means it's an unwanted guest. You can easily tell this anxiety, I don't want you today, and there are ways to do that, and push that anxiety away. Or you may do things that invite this anxiety to come and stay with you and stay for longer. So it's very important that you understand that you are separate from the problem. The problem can be invited to come and stay, or it can be pushed away, and so you have some control over it, you have some power over it. So I hope to give you some activities, some ideas on how to overcome anxiety. And I want to say one thing before I begin those thoughts or ideas. Some will seem to some of you very weird ideas, or they may seem, like you're not familiar with them. That's fine. But I just want you to know that sometimes some of what we feel is strange may turn out to be what helps the most. So just keep an open mind with some of what I will discuss with you. The first thing I want to mention is God knows that we get anxious. He knows that. And if you look at the first verse I have in the handout, it's from Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. It says, "Therefore I tell you," who's speaking here? Christ Jesus. "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life." So as soon as Christ says, "Do not be anxious," that means He knows we're gonna get anxious. He understands that people do get anxious, and He's asking, "Do not get anxious. Do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing?" It's just looking at that verse, if you would please. What is Jesus instructing us to do? What is He instructing us? To trust in Him and not to be anxious, not to worry. But He's talking about not to worry about what? Materialistic stuff? Life? Huh? Tomorrow. That's the key word. Look at the verbs. All the verbs are in the future tense. It says, what you will eat or drink, what you will put on, and so on. And anxiety is about the future. Guilt is about the past. So when you think of your past, you get sometimes a sense of guilt. Anxiety is when you jump ahead of yourself and begin to think about a future that is not much known to you, but usually you think of it in a negative way. Something bad is going to happen. Or, I'm not going to find food. This is what Christ's saying. Don't think about food. Or, my life is going to turn out to be bad. Or, this horrible thing is going to happen. And these thoughts, they are actually very real thoughts. They come to us and they make us feel very anxious. They're usually very negative thoughts. Look at the second verse. Matthew chapter 6, again, same chapter, 2 verses, verse 26 and 28, so 2 verses now. "Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin." Again, my question to you, what is Christ trying to convince His audience with? So, that God cares and loves us. What else do you see in that verse? What's He trying to say? Yeah.
Does it say God provides for us?
God provides. God is a provider. And what is He trying to say about anxiety? Look at the verse, you'll see it.
It has no benefit.
It doesn't work. Exactly. You can be anxious, but anxiety, being anxious, which of you being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life? You can't. The answer is it's a question where a negative answer is expected. It doesn't work. And you guys know that very well. I know that very well. When we're anxious, we accomplish nothing. In fact, when we're anxious, we accomplish less. We're paralyzed. We can't do anything. So let's look at anxiety. What other words would you use to describe anxiety? So let's use a one-word association here. Worry. Thank you. Fear. Nervousness. Being nervous. Overthinking. Uncertainty. Keyword. Did you prepare this with me? You seem to be on top of things. Very good. What's your name? Anthony. Anthony, you said it right. Uncertainty. Anxiety is about not being okay with uncertainty. And it is such a mind game that our minds play on us. You know what anxiety says, or your mind tell you? The mind puts you in a lose-lose situation. It's a game. Your mind tells you, listen, you don't know what's going to happen if you meet those people. You don't know when you come to Guelph how you'll be greeted. You don't know what these people are, what they intend to do to you. And And then Abu Nafshoy answers his mind and says, "That is true, I don't know. How would I find out?" And my mind answers and says, "Well, you will really never find out until you go." But going is very dangerous because these people could eat you up alive. Who knows? And then I answer and say, "Hold on, I don't know." And my mind says, "And you will never know." And then my mind throws in another rule of the game. You know what that other rule is? You don't know, you cannot know, and it's not good not to know. And that's how anxiety builds up. It's a lose-lose situation. And if you're going to play the game, you will lose every time. You know, I don't know, some people may have gotten used to doing certain rituals, and a little bit of compulsive disorder here, but you know, if I have to draw the sign of the cross 3 times before I write my exam, or I'm going to fail. Or I have to put a cross on the top of each page, or else I'm not going to pass. It's not a matter of blessing, it's actually a matter of anxiety. Not that I put the cross because I want blessing. No. My mind begins to tell me, unless you put the cross, something bad's going to happen. Or if you're flying in a plane, and then some may get a thought, you know, unless you sit in a certain way, or you things like that, and your mind tells you you're not sure. Maybe what I'm telling you is right, and you don't want to find out if you're wrong. It's a game with rules that make sure you end up losing. So the word uncertainty is key. So while we all feel anxious at some point, some of us at some times will feel it more often, will feel it deeper, some less frequent, some less intensely. But your own experience of anxiety really depends on 4 things. The first thing is it depends on genetics. So basically, it could run in families. It could run in families. Your mom is anxious, your dad is anxious, your grandmother from your dad's side was anxious, you're anxious. You know, it could run genetically. It could also be due to brain chemistry. So there are chemicals that make us anxious. When they're in the bloodstream, they make us anxious. Third one, life events. Maybe at one point in your development, one point in your life, different stages in life, you've experienced some trauma. Or you experienced your parents in a certain way that made you always feel uncertain. Almost questioning the safety of your environment. And yeah, that could cause anxiety, especially if it happened to you when you were very little. The fourth one is personality. Personality is how the specific part of personality that I want to speak of is how you interpret things that happen to you. So the way you look at things. So of these 4, genetics, brain chemistry, life events, and personality, which one do you have the most control over? Yeah, the way you see things, the way you perceive things. You cannot change your genetics, you cannot change your brain chemistry, you cannot really change past life events. You can only change the way you look at things. That's under your own control. So let's talk a bit of the chemistry of anxiety. So in prehistoric times, I want to take you back to Flintstones, right? I want to take you back to caveman. In prehistoric times, humans faced different challenges. For example, an adolescent like yourself, waking up in the morning and yawning, getting ready to get out of the cave. As soon as they're out of the cave, they see this huge lion just waiting for them out there. Our caveman, or our cave teenager, a man or woman, they're faced with a threat. So our bodies are created and programmed to survive. So when confronted with this lion, our prehistoric teenager would send the signal threat. And the body would respond by shooting hormones such as adrenalines. Now, some of you, I'm sure, have studied this in at least high school level. Adrenaline prepares the body for what? Fight or flight. Perfect. That's exactly what this cave person needs when he sees this monstrous lion right at the door. It's either I begin to fight the lion or I run. And guess what? In both cases, what is the person doing? Whether they fight the lion or run, what are they doing? So they're doing one of two modern things are either doing kickboxing or they're doing what? They're jumping on the treadmill, pretty much. So what are they doing? What's that? Exercising. And guess what exercising does? It makes the adrenaline in the blood gets absorbed out of the bloodstream again, and the person's anxiety has served its purpose, helped the person survive, either by running or fighting, and after the exercise is done, the hormones have dissipated. Let's come to our modern time. You wake up in the morning in your bedroom, okay? And you're not stepping out of a cave, but you're stepping out of your own bedroom. And as you step out of the bedroom in the morning, you say, oops, I have a final exam, or I have this due, or I'm going to meet up those people that I don't want to meet up with again, or this professor who hates my guts and for no reason is giving me bad marks, and so on. As soon as you step out, your body is telling yourself what? Threat, exactly like the lion. But now, your body is ready for fight or flight, but instead what do? Let's carry on. You walk with that anxiety and this chemistry, this chemical change inside of you, and you bottle it in and you go on. So the anxiety is staying and it makes us stewing with an increasing anxiety, and we now become more vulnerable to emotional and physical problems to overcome anxiety. So it's very well known that the person who's anxious because they have an exam, they may end up with a headache or stomach ache. Anxiety comes out. It's gonna come out one way or the other. And if you keep bottling your worries and you keep bottling your anxiety, you could have you could have migraines, you could have stomach pains, you could have back pains, you could have neurological pains. It's gonna come out one way or the other. It will. So when we speak then of what God has given us to overcome anxiety, He has given us peace. He's the one who says, "My peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you." So where is the peace? It's already with you. Some people say, "I need to acquire peace." You don't need to acquire peace. Peace is where? It's within you. It's not anywhere. It's just within you. It's not anywhere far. This reminds me of the story of the renowned 4th century artist Michelangelo, who was asked how he created the exquisite statue of David. He made a very nice statue in Florence of David. And he was asked, how did you create this statue from a solid piece of marble? And you know what Michelangelo replied? He said, David was already in the stone. All I had to do was chip the extra stone. So to him, David was already in there. And same thing. Peace is already with you. It's not something to acquire outside of you. It's already given to you as a Christian. It's with you. My peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. It's with you. It's just a matter of chipping away the thoughts and the things that cover that peace. Anxiety covers that peace. So, are you good with the handout so far? So, how do we deal with anxiety? Two things, and I really mean those two things are very important. There is prevention and there is management. Unfortunately, I don't think many of us work much on prevention. Let me ask you for a very weird question. When's the last time you sat down and relaxed for 5 minutes without your phone? We're not talking bedtime. Even bedtime, sometimes people sleep with their phone. They wake up and the phone was in their hand, right? What's that? Yes. So that's not, see, that's the problem, is we think that when we sit down and not study, that that's a relaxing time. That's not automatically a relaxing time. In fact, some of what you will see on Instagram may actually get you more anxious, especially if your friend had more likes than you did. And that's not going to be very peaceful, right? But seriously, prevention is so important. And the church has always taught us, the quiet time to pray. Jesus said, go into your room and do what? Huh? No, he didn't say go to your room and pray. He said go to your room and do what? Whenever you pray, go into your chamber and close your door. I want you to know one thing. The Jews did not have the luxury of our homes. So there were 7, 8 people, they all lived in one room. So what room is Jesus talking about? You know, we have a room where we tell our parents, Now, back in the day, most people lived all together. So what room was Jesus talking about? The heart. And close your door means what? There needs to be some sort of end, there needs to be some sort of a stop to distractions. So prevention is spending time to relax, spending time on a regular basis. And this is my challenge to you and to myself. Do you have 5 minutes every day where you're not stimulated by TV or your phone, that is obviously Instagram, Facebook, all the social networking apps and all that? Is there a time where you sit quietly to yourself and you're not sleeping? Okay. Second thing is interventions.
But even if we manage to cut all those distractions away, we still have more thoughts.
That's right. Imagine, of course, yes. The intervention, yes. So the prevention is getting used to a routine where there is a time of stillness and quietness. Tell me, how many of you have been to a monastery retreat? Okay, a few people. Okay, and so tell me, how are you in a monastery retreat? Not the first day, not the second day, but if you have the luxury of staying for the 4th or 5th day, how are you on the 4th and 5th day? Go back to your own experience, where obviously it was a monastery experience where your phone wasn't working. So let me rephrase that question. Have you been to a monastery retreat where you had no access to the world? Okay, how are you on the 4th, 5th day? Calm, right? What happened? What happened? There is a strength in this quietness, and then our thoughts, they're not as quiet at the beginning, but over the few days, what happens to our thoughts? It's like murky water. Eventually, it settles. So how do you experience anxiety? I want you to recognize that anxiety, as it approaches you, will approach you differently than it would approach the person sitting beside you. So it's important that you understand what triggers your anxiety, what triggers your worry. This is not a sermon. This is a question for you to reflect on. What triggers your anxiety? What makes you worry? And you'll find there are not many things, usually 3 or 4 things max. Probably for some people it's only one main thing. So you got to understand that. You have to know what signs and symptoms you feel when you get anxious. What happens to your body when you get anxious? Do you recognize that? What happens?